Have you ever pulled cards and thought, this kind of makes sense, but also I still don't know what to do with it? That's what I want to talk about today. This feeling usually isn't about intuition, talent, or not knowing the cards well enough. Most of the time, it comes down to the question you brought to the cards. Tarot responds clearly, but sometimes it isn't clear what it's actually responding to. And the easiest way to see that is to notice how the same cards can tell very different stories depending on how they are asked. Let me start with something really common first. General readings. A lot of people feel safest asking for a general reading because it feels open, flexible, and low pressure. To be clear, general readings aren't bad. I do them too. But general does not mean random. Even when someone asks for a general reading, there is always some kind of frame at work, even if it's unspoken. As a reader, you're listening for a theme, a direction, or a central thread the cards are responding to. For example, when I give a general reading, I usually pull a first card that sets the theme for the general reading, and then I lay out the actual spread cards. When that frame is missing or unclear, the reading can feel emotionally resonant, but also vague and hard to apply. So let's make this very concrete now. For this whole conversation, I'm using the same 3 cards. The 5 of Pentacles, the Knight of Swords, and the Star. Nothing about the cards changes, only the question does. So those 3 cards together are the spread that is answering my question. First, of course, the most common kind of question. What do I need to know right now? Without a specific focus, the cards read like this. The 5 of Pentacles points to feeling left out, unsupported, depleted, or worried about lack. That can be anything, emotionally, materially, or energetically. Yes, the coins are mostly connected to material lack, but not exclusively. The Knight of Swords shows what happens next. The mind tries to outrun that discomfort. Thoughts speed up, urgency kicks in, there's a sense that something needs to be fixed immediately. And then the Star is the counterpoint. It doesn't erase the lack or urgency, it introduces hope as a response, asking to trust and for patience instead of pressure. So, taken together, this shows an inner tension between feeling unsupported, trying to think your way out of it, and being asked to soften instead to push. But this is incredibly broad. Yes, it does bring awareness, but it doesn't yet tell you what to do next or where to look next. This could be about work, or a relationship, or burnout, or self-worth, or health, or all of the above. This is usually the point where people think, yeah, I get that resonates with me, but I still don't know what to do with it. And now let's change the question. What is the current dynamic in this relationship? And yes, this can be any kind of relationship, not only a romantic one. Same cards. The 5 speaks clearly of emotional distance, feeling unseen, unsupported, or emotionally shut out within the relationship. The Knight shows that distance is being handled through fast reactions, sharp words, or conversations that move too quickly to feel safe or to offer a solution. And the Star is the reminder that healing is possible, but only if the dynamics shift from defensiveness to openness. So in this spread, communication is the bridge between hurt and repair. Taken all three together, it's just like the inner tension between wanting closeness, reacting from hurt, and being asked to slow down enough so that repair can actually happen. If we compare this to the first general reading, the difference here is not just focus, it's usefulness. In the general reading, the cards point to an inner tension and invite softening, but they don't yet tell you how you can do that and how to move forward. The lens now with the relationship question narrows down enough so that the cards do offer guidance. What would actually support repairing the rupture? Thus, the meaning from this reading becomes actionable. Let's shift the context another time. What is going on for me professionally right now? The 5 reflects feeling undervalued, insecure, or worried about stability or recognition at work. The Knight shows the response to that insecurity, mental overdrive, providing your worth through speed, urgency, and constant output. The Star, on the other hand, frames the situation by pulling the focus away from immediate pressure and back towards long-term direction. It suggests that sustainability and trust in the bigger picture matter more than pushing harder right now. So all three together show the inner tension between feeling insecure about your place, trying to outrun that fear through effort, and being asked to slow down and trust a longer path. So instead of simply noticing the depletion and urgency like the general reading, the cards now point toward a career-specific pattern. Insecurity leading to overperformance, and overperformance blocking long-term stability. So the advice in the cards becomes practical, less rushing, more strategic trust in where you're heading. It's the same emotions, but a different takeaway. Another question that is still general, but more contained. What is the main theme influencing me right now? The 5 is the core theme, the awareness of lack, depletion, and unmet needs, while the Knight of Swords shows the inner conflict of this phase, the urge to stay mentally busy and in motion instead of slowing down and feeling what is missing. And then the Star points toward the invitation, healing that comes from softening, trusting the process and allowing support rather than forcing solutions. So this spread shows an inner tension between noticing what is missing, staying busy to avoid feeling it, and being invited to receive support instead of pushing through alone. Compared to the first general reading, this question gives the card a clear organizing principle. It anchors the reading in a present moment influence rather than a wide, undefined overview. Instead of offering a broad invitation to soften, the spread now highlights what is actually influencing your choices and behavior right now. And the guidance becomes even more clear. Slowing down and allowing support is not optional, it's the central work in this phase. This is still a general reading, but the spread now has a direction. Up until now, we have changed the context of the question to see how meaning sharpens, and if we take it one step further, even the tone of the question has influence of the interpretation. A commonly asked question can sound like, why does everything feel so hard right now? And with that frame, the 5 turns into self-blame, the Knight becomes pressure to fix everything immediately, and the star turns into wishful thinking instead of grounded hope. The inner conflict here is between exhaustion and urgency, feeling depleted while also feeling like slowing down isn't allowed. Now let's compare that to what would support me through this phase of hardship. The Pentacles become an honest acknowledgement of the depletion. The Knight of Swords becomes awareness of stress rather than a command to act, and the Star becomes a realistic path towards healing, one that values steadiness over speed. Same cards in all those readings, but once the question points towards a clearer path forward, the experience of the reading changes. So the pattern I want you to notice: vague questions create emotional fog, framed questions create narrative, fear-based questions like why does everything feel so hard collapse the reading inward, while supportive questions open it up. And if a reading feels muddy, you don't need new cards, you usually need a better question. If what I talked up until here resonates with you, I have 3 simple questions you can try next time before you pull cards. You ask yourself, what area of life is this actually about? What am I hoping to get from the cards? Understanding, reassurance, or perspective? And does this question give me somewhere to stand, or does it drop me into fear? So if you can answer those, your question already has the clarity. Tarot isn't vague by nature, it responds to the relationship we bring to it, especially through our questions. I want to give you something you can actually use, not perfect wording or strict rules, but a way to rethink your questions so you can ask them more clearly. The goal here is not to memorize questions, but to create them. And a question that leads to clear readings usually does 3 things at once. I don't think about this consciously anymore, but it's an underlying pattern. The question names the situation. It places you inside it, and it makes clear what kind of help you're asking for. If one of those pieces is missing, the reading often stays muddy. Let me show you what I mean. A very common starting point in a question is, what's going to happen with this relationship? The question comes from uncertainty, but it also asks the cards to decide the ending while the situation is still unfolding. That makes a clear answer almost impossible. If you rephrase it to, what is the current dynamic in this relationship and what would support a shift? Now the cards know where to look. They can describe what's actually happening, how you are involved, and what could change instead of trying to predict an outcome. You could even go a step further and ask about a specific direction. What would support a shift towards a romantic relationship, for example? Same situation, but very, very different guidance. Or, how do they feel about me? That question pulls all the force to the other person. Some readers don't even answer this question because it leaves the person asking out of it. If you move it to, what pattern is playing out between us right now, the reading comes back into your hands. Now it's about what you can do, not what they might feel. If you transfer that to work or purpose, a question like, am I on the right path? Is very understandable, but also very broad. And I asked that myself plenty of times. Don't take this as anything else. It asks for a yes or no answer, kinda, even though most situations at work are more complex than that. Tarot isn't built for simple yes or no answers. The cards don't work like switches that flip to yes or no. They show process, influences, and tension over time. When we force them into a binary answer, a lot of useful information gets flattened or completely lost. If you rephrase it to what is influencing my sense of direction in my work right now, the card can focus on very concrete factors: pressure, fear, motivation, expectations, values, the things that are actively shaping how clear or unclear this path feels. Another very common one I've heard: why am I stuck in my career? This can explain why you feel stuck, but it doesn't help you move forward. If you shift that to what is keeping me stuck and what would help me move forward, the reading stops explaining the problem and starts pointing towards movement. Or in moments of emotional overwhelm, people tend to ask, why does everything feel so hard? That question is valid and honest, but it asks the cards to just sit in this emotion of overwhelm. It reflects the weight back to you, sometimes even amplifies it, without giving you a way to relate to it differently. How do you feel about rephrasing it to, what is the main theme influencing me right now? Or what would support me through this current phase? Then the role of the card changes. Instead of confirming how heavy everything feels, they begin to organize the experience. They help you see what this moment is actually about, where the pressure is coming from, and what would make it more bearable. The intensity doesn't disappear, but it becomes understandable. And that alone can make it way easier to move through. In all these examples, the better question doesn't sound more spiritual or more clever. It's just more specific. My check before pulling cards for myself is, does the question name the situation, include me, and invite guidance rather than judgment? If the answer is yes, the question is good to go. And if you don't know what to ask at all, it usually means the situation hasn't settled yet. And those moments, questions about themes, influences, or support are often the most grounded place to start. Your goal is always clarity, so that the cards don't have to guess what you are asking, and you don't have to guess what they are saying. At this point, there are a few questions that almost always come up, so I want to answer them in advance. What if I'm already emotional when I'm asking? Feeling emotional doesn't invalidate a reading. You don't need to be calm or neutral before reading. You just need to notice where your emotions sit. If you are overwhelmed, confused, or anxious, that becomes part of the situation. That just means questions about support, themes, or what would help you tend to work much better than trying to force clarity you don't have yet. Another common question I have had in the past: what if I rephrase the question and the reading still feels vague? Sometimes that's simply because the situation itself isn't settled yet. In those cases, the cards don't have one clear answer to give, because there isn't one yet. Other times the question is fine, but you're doing too much work for a single pull. Or 3 cards, right? That's when narrowing the focus help. Ask about what's blocking clarity, what you're not seeing yet, or what the next small step is. Because sometimes the honest answer is that this isn't a one-question situation at all. Some topics need a spread with clear positions. I'm mostly talking about quick focused pulls up until here. but not every situation will fit into that format. I also get the question, how many questions should I ask in one reading? Well, the question usually comes up when people start to feel scattered or overwhelmed. In my experience, one good question is often enough. You can ask follow-ups, but they should grow out of the first answer and not replace it. When readings get muddy, it's often because we're asking 5 different questions at once and pulling cards faster than we are integrating what they are saying. But once again, if you feel like you want to ask 20 things at once, perhaps you need a spread. What if the cards give clear guidance that I don't like? Clear does not mean comfortable. If the answer feels challenging, that doesn't mean the reading failed. It means the question did its job. You don't have to act on everything immediately. Sometimes the work is just sitting with what was shown until you're ready. And another last question I get sometimes, is it okay if my question changes once I see the cards? Yes. That is responding to the deck, responding to the cards, as long as you are not pulling cards just to override an answer you do not want. Adjusting your question is part of how understanding deepens and how you learn for future pulls. But with this little part, don't pull cards just to override an answer you don't want or don't like. If you have ever asked a good question, pulled a card and another and another and another until you had a lot of information but still no clarity, you're in the right place. That usually isn't because the question was wrong, but because the situation itself is doing more than one thing at the same time. We talked about why readings can feel unclear and how better questions already change it. This part is about what happens when a single pull isn't enough anymore. This is where structure matters. Structure in this case isn't about complexity, not about adding more rules or positions or cards. The structure here is about separation. It gives different parts of a situation their own place, so they don't merge into one answer. You usually notice it when a single card stops being enough to answer what you're actually asking. For example, when a question involves more than one person, a relationship question often isn't just about feelings. It's about dynamics, boundaries, timing, and choice. 1 or 2 cards can reflect the emotional tone, but they can hardly hold all of that at once. Or when emotions and decisions are tangled together. Questions like, should I stay or go, often carry fear, attachment, responsibility, and desire at the same time. Without structure, the cards answer everything at once, and that's when the reading starts to feel contradictory. Instead of rewriting the same question for agents, it is better to pick a different tool here. Or when the past is still active. If something ended but its influence hasn't, a single pull often blends past and present together. A spread lets those layers speak separately. Or simply when the question keeps branching. If every answer immediately creates 2 new questions, that's usually a sign the situation needs more space, not necessarily more cards. Or you already start with an either-or question. A very common pattern I see is what I call a single pull overload. You start with one clear question, then you pull a clarifier, then another because something still feels off, and before long you're sorting instead of reading. That's a sign that the question contains multiple parts. In those cases, structure does the sorting for you. A simple example is the 2-branch spread. This is useful when a question naturally splits into two, like stay or go, speak up or stay quiet, continue or change direction. Instead of asking those at once, the spread gives each branch its own space. One branch answers what happens if you follow one path, another shows the other path. A closing position shows what actually wants your attention beneath the choice. That is structure. And that is also the moment where many people get stuck. They know a sense would help, but they don't know which kind of spread actually fits the situation. Another common use for spreads is when a question mixes identity and influence. This is where choosing the right kind of spread matters more than choosing a big one. A helpful way to think of this is you don't pick a spread based on how many cards you want to pull, but based on what the question is doing. The question is about choice, a branching spread helps. If the question is about process or transition, a cycle-based spread helps. If the question is about confusion or distortion, a spread that separates perception from reality helps. For example, during transition periods, people tend to ask questions that include who I've been, what I'm still carrying, what's already over, and what's calling me forward. Trying to hold all that in 3 or 4 cards from a one question leads to heavy emotional readings that feel true, but hard to use. And this is where a spread I shared earlier this year comes in. I will post it here. I originally created it around New Year, but it works for any kind of cycle, endings, transitions, identity shifts, or long processes that don't resolve all at once. What matters here isn't the occasion, it's what the structure does. Before you even look at cards, the spread already separates what has been outgrown, what is still echoing, what is complete, what can be released, what wants to be reclaimed, what belief is distorting the view, and what direction needs attention now. If you try to ask all of that in one question, the reading would feel like, intense, emotional, and really, really overwhelming. Now, with the structure, each part has its own place. So, when you're wondering which spread makes sense, ask yourself, what is the situation asking me to separate? Not what do I want to know, but what needs its own space so it doesn't blur together. Once you answer that, the shape of the spread often becomes obvious. That doesn't make a reading more complicated, it makes it more digestible. This is also why adding more cards without structure usually makes things worse. You don't get more clarity, you just get more noise. Structure allows the card to answer different aspects of the same situation without competing with each other. The spreads are containers you build around your question. And designing your own spread doesn't mean coming up with something overly clever or complicated. It just usually starts by looking at your question and noticing how many different things is it actually asking at once. So if a question contains a choice, you separate the paths. If it contains a process, you separate the stages. If it contains confusion, you separate perception from what is actually happening. Each position simply gives you one part of the situation in a clear role. And once your approach spreads this way, they stop feeling intimidating. They become a natural extension of asking better questions, just with a bit more space. And that's why structure matters more than more cards. But one last reassurance here, this comes up sometimes. There's no such thing as a spread that's too big. There are spreads that use 3 cards or spreads that use an entire deck. With experience, you start to feel what a situation can actually hold. The same goes for choosing the right spread. If it doesn't fit perfectly, that's fine. Working with spreads is a practice. The more you do it, the easier it becomes to sense what kind of structure a situation needs. Every reading is feedback. I hope you found something new or inspiring for you today. And if you are curious about what else I have to share, please leave a like and a sub to my channel. It really, really helps me out. And if you want to share how you are working with spreads or where things feel unclear, I would love to hear about it in the comments. Take care and thank you for sharing space.